Hello.
Hi, Kayla.
Hi, yes, how are you?
Hi, this is Paige Skinner with HuffPost. How are you?
I'm great.
Is right now still an okay time for the interview?
Yes, absolutely.
I guess I found you on Twitter.
Mm-hmm.
I'm trying to think.
I was going to ask you, where did you find me?
Or was it TikTok? I can't remember. Can you first tell me what you use to make your predictions?
Yes, I use Astrology primarily. That's what I use usually for predictive astrology.
Can you tell me what transits are?
So transits are, everyone has a natal chart, which is like a static birth chart, which is typically what you see when you see astrologers post like a screenshot of that very complicated wheel. But when we look at transits, this is more so going to reflect what's currently happening in relation to the static birth chart. So that helps us kind of form a conclusion based off of both what's happening astrologically, but then even taking things that have historically happened already in their chart into account as well.
Okay, so can you tell me about Kamala and Trump's natal charts?
Yes, I have to say, like, for months now, I keep going back and forth. I have no issue removing like bias or anything. Like, I don't get emotionally involved when it comes to looking at predictions, but I think it's challenging sometimes to not take like the general status quo into account and, you know, allow that to not deter what I'm looking at astrologically. So I've gone back and forth. I did think Trump was going to win when we were still dealing with Biden as the opposite candidate. I do think it is Kamala now. However, I will say with that though, there is a hesitation, not because I'm like, oh, well, Trump may win, but I think there's just a third variable or some sort of fluke that may happen that is at the very least just going to complicate the election itself.
Interesting.
Yeah, it just doesn't feel like a normal, I don't feel like I can say, oh, you know, one person's going to win and that's the end of it, and then we just adapt. I feel like there is going to be some complications. One of the reasons I do think that is because we're going to be having Mercury station a shadow period the day after the election, which is very similar to something that we experienced with the 2020 election. We obviously know that there was a lot of debate around, was this correct? Were things counted incorrectly? Was there like someone trying to cheat or rig the election here? So I would not be surprised if we saw similar themes regardless of who does end up winning. In terms of, well, one thing just historically predicting off of the past, I'll say is even like if we take Kamala and Trump out of this as individuals, Saturn in Pisces, which is something we're experiencing now, historically has always been a Democratic win. To my understanding, I'm pretty sure every single time we had that planet in Pisces, which we do currently, it has always been a Democratic win. So that leads me to kind of lean into her as well. I don't know. There's a few things I looked at. I have so many notes, so I know I'm saying like a lot of terminology, so I'd be happy to send them to you, but I have some things for like the inauguration day, the election day itself, and then really even looking into next year.
Do you have any predictions about Inauguration Day?
Yeah, both of them honestly like have some turbulent transits coming up. The election itself, I would say across the board collectively, like even beyond politics, is a pretty aggressive day. A lot of aggression in the air. It definitely can bring like an uptick in like crime or unrest or just general aggression between people. So that's something where I'm like, of course we're having that on the day of the election. Just a few days later, if I look at the chart of the US itself, we're having something that typically reflects things like communication flukes or technical difficulties, things not adding up with communication, with announcements, votes, statements, things that are usually very integral to communicating details. So that again leads me to thinking of a fluke with Inauguration Day. I would say that it's uncomfortable for both of them. In Kamala's case, she's having a second pass of transits that she already experienced in spring of this year, of 2024. So my understanding of this is like, okay, she's already had her first pass of this and we didn't see anything, at least like to my understanding in a very public way, ridiculously problematic with her, like any booming headlines. So I'm like, okay, she's been through this before, it's blown over, it's passed for her. Whereas with Trump, it's a lot more abrasive, uncomfortable for both. I think personality wise, Trump maybe has a tendency to be more pompous or to lean into that sort of egoic nature. So in that sense, it makes me wonder if he's gonna be maybe a bit more antagonistic. Like I guess what I'm picturing is if Kamala wins, great for everyone that supports Kamala, but I don't think it's going to be smooth for either party. And really around Inauguration Day too, he's going to be having a transit that was a little bit, present around the time that he had the assassination attempt. So I don't want to say, I think it's a very big statement to say, oh, he's going to have a second one, but there's certainly a lot of like unexpected aggravation, unexpected aggression coming out of left field, accidents, even if it's things that maybe aren't a targeted attack, but rather like health issues, can certainly be present. I would say definitely around even beforehand, like Thanksgiving, early December. I know that on the 26th, I think he has something with like his legal disputes, and I'm wondering if that's more so having to do with that than like the actual I'm talking about November, sorry, I'm jumping around everywhere, but I'm wondering if that is something being reflected as well.
Have you always been a political astrologer?
No, I don't even think I would label myself as that. I definitely do. I mean, I've always done astrology, but over the last 2 to 3 years, I've kind of made a name for myself, I think, with predictive astrology, particularly with celebrities. And then obviously when there's a major event like with the election, I try to put my 2 cents in there as well.
Yeah. Can you give me some examples of anything that you've correctly predicted?
Oh, absolutely. Hold on. I have a whole thread of it on Twitter.
Do you have any that you've correctly predicted in politics?
With politics, yes, I had, hold on, I want to make sure I don't miss anything. I'm going to go to my reference thing of it. One of the bigger ones was that I did call Biden stepping down on July 21st. That was one of the bigger ones. I did call the assassination attempt. I can link you to them as well, because typically what I do is I post them on Twitter in advance, and then I just wait to see if they come true or not. And even when they're wrong, I keep them up because I think it's important to do that. But trying to think what else politically. That might have been it more so because, again, the prediction aspect of everything became a little bit more of my niche, like more recently in the last 2 years.
How did you know Biden would step down?
He had an aspect, I'm trying to think off the top of my head, that like quite literally reflects a position of power or status kind of being dropped down to its knees. He's been someone for a while too. Like, this is what's so interesting. Again, I really remove any bias I have when I look at this stuff, and if anything, it makes me more confused on like how many things are planned and how many things aren't, because I would say in Biden's chart, he had things for quite a while that really reflected like mental decline and things that you would see in someone who's like close to having like an aneurysm or like an issue with their brain or something. So that was my first, I started looking at that in 2021 and was wondering if he was going to pass away, right? Like we immediately jumped to the drama of him like dying. So I started there, and then he had the first pass of perhaps stepping down in power, actually almost, I think it might have been the same exact day on July, or was it July 21st, right? Or June 21st?
Yes.
July 21st. He had that first pass of it in 2022. And it was funny because then exactly the same day when the second pass of that transit happened, just a year later, he actually ended up stepping down. So it's interesting to see how the cycles ebb and flow, and then ultimately there's just a day where it ends up being activated and executing in the birth chart.
Yeah. And how did you know about the assassination attempt?
Same thing. Like, the thing with astrology is it's quite simple. There's a lot of complexities to it, but really at the end of the day, there's certain planets that represent certain possible outcomes. I'm not going to say it's always going to be, I can't, and nobody can correctly predict something with absolute accuracy or absolute, being sure that it's going to happen for sure. But Trump himself, like, he has, even in a way that people admire, a very aggressive nature to him, a very confident nature to him, someone who's abrasive, and it actually works quite well for him. So even when he has bad transits, sometimes he's someone who's able to kind of work with them and alchemize them in a way that maybe someone who's a little bit more passive wouldn't be able to. And so in his chart, I'm trying to think back in July. When I say collectively, what I mean is that it's affecting everybody. So we had a collective transit that, again, was quite dangerous and abrasive, but in his chart, it was very personal to him because it was hitting personal planets. And more often than not, it's pretty easy to see when there's going to be a day where it's like, oh, that person should like stay inside or not call a lot of attention to themselves to prevent any accidents or danger happening.
Yeah. Can you tell me why Kamala's birth chart makes you think that she will win?
Yeah, I think there's a few things that, let me pull it off really quickly, that stick out to me in terms of she's having movement in her chart with certain planets that, similarly to Biden stepping down, actually represent her stepping up and having like a change in status, a lot of authority. She had something called a Saturn return, which everyone has about every 30 years or so. The first one you have around 30, the second one you have around 60. And she already passed that, which is kind of a good indicator that she's, I don't want to say in the clear, but has kind of went over a recent hurdle that if it was gonna take her out in terms of like her public image, it probably would have happened then. And she's having a planet that really represents like authority and status, responsibility, maybe being taken more seriously, going through the most public area of her chart that really reflects her career, her public image, her reputation, etc. There's
Wait,
go ahead.
Sorry. What, when you say she has a planet that represents all that, what planet?
I'm looking at Saturn in her 10th house for the technical terms. There's, what's interesting though, this is where I'm like, I'm so curious to see how everything's going to fall together, because other things that sort of represent her, again, like gaining more respect in the public eye, really start to kick in not until like 2026. So I'm wondering if, not like it's going to be bad every day the first 2 years if she does win, like it's, again, like everything else, it's going to ebb and flow, but I feel like there might be a turning of the general public where maybe people who didn't like her begin to like her. And something that I have not seen anyone say that is interesting to me is the last time, I'm trying to think of how to say this without it sounding like a different language. We're having a planet move into like a beautiful area, a beautiful sign where it thrives. It does really well collectively for everyone next year into 2025. This is going to be happening in the middle of the year. There's a lot of very good transits happening for both Kamala, but the US's chart itself. And the last time that we had this was around 2013. When Obama was president. And that's not to say, oh, Obama was an incredible president, like we're going to completely replicate what was going on back then. But I think that Kamala has a similar effect on people in terms of like her charisma and her sense of humor. Like I think she does, whether people like her or not, bring like a lightheartedness to the table that I think people miss in the Obamas, and how they had like the nuclear family and they were a really respectable marriage and all of those things. So I think that us having a transit across the board that is nostalgic to 2013, around that era, I'm wondering if that is going to sweep up similar feelings in people in terms of how, I guess, likable she is. And it really, in the US's chart too, it's typically going to be for the most part, I would say it's optimistic in terms of like financial policies, economic conditions, things that really focus too on like families, on healthcare, because it's going through a very financial area of the US's chart. So I don't know, I'm interested because I feel like looking back on that transit in 2013 and how maybe people felt at the time, like in a general sense, I don't know if that transit complements what it would look like with Trump in office, regardless of his policies, because of the way people fear him maybe or feel about him on a personal level.
Yeah. What is America's chart based on?
So it is actually, let me pull that one up too. So it is like the 4th of July. It's in 1776 and it's in Philadelphia. So that is typically the chart that astrologers use to make predictions for the country itself. And it's nice to see that there's a transit worth looking forward to as we get into like June of next year. I will say at the very, very worst, while this is a positive planet, it can exasperate things for better or for worse. So if there is something that is an inflammatory issue already, sometimes it can take up more space and actually bring a sense of abundance there. So to see it going through a financial sector, I'm like crossing my fingers, hoping that this means that there's going to be more support for people financially rather than, oh, the debt is going up more, oh, people are unhoused more, all of the negative consequences of money not being handled accurately.
And what about Trump? What house is he in?
I'm trying to think of, because that question doesn't really make sense, and it's okay because I know you don't. You're trying to use it. No, it's okay. Do you mean what exactly are you asking when you ask that?
Well, didn't you say Harris was in her 10th house?
Yeah, she has what's called Saturn transiting her 10th house. It's a 3-year cycle. It began in spring of 2023 and it'll leave in spring of 2026. That's not to say it's good or bad every single day. It reflects authority. It does reflect more responsibility and sometimes challenge, but usually rewarded challenge in terms of status with career. In Trump's chart, where he is having Saturn, it's going through his 8th house, which is money that has to do with other people or entities outside of you. So this is issues with financial institutions, or even marriage too can come up with this. Anything through banking, taxes, debt. So Kamala really starts to have those good transits kick in as we get into May of June of next year. And with Trump, I'm wondering, because he starts to get the brunt end of bad transits, even if he wins next year. But because of those transits, it's making me feel that he won't, because they start to become a little bit more legal and complicated and reflecting things that are like government, prison related. So I'm like, I don't know how those two things can exist at once, where he wins this like incredible presidency and then he's also dealing with all these things on the side.
Got it. Okay, so does Trump's chart say anything that sticks out to you as in why he won't win the election?
I'm looking at it right now. It's not that, this is why it was challenging for me, because part of me is like, again, even when he has challenging stuff, he does have the ability to prevail past it. Like, obviously, for example, with the assassination attempt, is that good on paper? No, but it earned him a lot of support and he was able to wield it into something that ultimately I think worked in his favor, at least with his supporters. So there isn't something that inherently tells me absolutely not, but I think in comparison to Kamala's chart, on paper, hers reflects, like if I didn't know these people and you were to give me the charts anonymously and ask me who's getting a promotion, I would say Kamala. That's probably a better way to put it.
Yeah, no, that makes sense. Okay, I don't really know what else to ask. I mean, do you think there's anything I missed or anything you want to add?
I don't think so. I guess one of the more contextual things that's just like a larger umbrella over all of this is that we're wrapping up a 250-year cycle with the US, and I know, like, according to Ray Dalio, he says it takes 250 years for like an empire to fall. And I think that it's interesting that this election is happening right at the tail end of what is possibly like the structures of the way everything has been working in our country up until this point crumbling a little bit. So I would say into the next 4 years, I do not think we'll be voting the same. I don't know what that looks like, but I think that we're turning a new leaf where everything that we're familiar with now probably will not be able to uphold itself as we transition into the next phase, I guess, of our country. But again, I know this was a lot, so I'm more than happy to send you the notes I have written, because I know it probably is very, like, sounds like a different language to you.
No, you're fine. Yeah, this was helpful. Maybe if you could send me tweets where you predicted things. The predictions are on Twitter, right?
Yeah, I can link you to specific ones if you would like.
Yeah, that would be great. You can text me or email me.
Okay.
But yeah, and your name is Kayla Murphy?
Yes,
right?
correct.
And what are your pronouns?
She, her.
Perfect. And are you a professional astrologer?
Yes, this is my job.
Awesome. Okay, well, if I have any follow-up questions, I will just email you. But I'll send you a link when this is live.
Okay, perfect. Thank you very much. I appreciate you reaching out to me.
Thank you. Have a good night.
Thank you. You as well.
Bye.